Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome to another RT Online review. This time I'll be reviewing the animated movie called Tales of Vesperia, The First Strike. Now, Tales of Vesperia, The First Strike is related to the video game, which is titled Tales of Vesperia. Now, this one takes place before the events of that game, and this was made after the game. So this movie was actually made for people who had actually beaten the game, or at least heard of it, and were curious about the story. But the fact that this takes place before everything means that the stakes aren't as high, the main plot isn't active, and some events haven't happened yet. So this was meant for people who wanted to get some extended lore on Tales of Vesperia. So the story goes, the main characters of this movie are Flynn Chifo and Yuri Lowell, and they are a part of the Imperial Knights. They're in their own brigade together. They were childhood friends, and there is some issue going on around the land that the air, not AIR but AER, the air, which is like this mystical force that they use to create these objects called Blastia, which they can use to power many sorts of different types of technology. In this world, air is very common, and so is Blastia, but sometimes things can go bad. Like, if there's too much air in one location, then some animals or people will be affected by it. And this is before the main plot of Tales of Vesperia, where it really explores the air issues. Air issues weren't as common around this time, but when it starts happening, people don't really know what to do. And there is a suspicion that something has to, like the air, because it's happening around a forest. I'm trying my best to explain this plot without spoiling anything, because if I go too deep into it, I might spoil stuff for Tales of Vesperia and The First Strike. So I'm trying to give you guys a brief synopsis. So the captain of Yuri and Flynn's brigade suspects that the problems with the air originate within these ruins that are near the forest where most of the issues have been happening. And Commandant Alexei, who runs the entire Imperial Knights, is saying, no, we have to run this ceremony around that same time. We'll wait till reinforcements come in. And Yuri and his captain don't really like that very much, so they decide to disobey orders and go explore those ruins. That's the plot in a nutshell, really. But the first half of this movie is a lot of talking. And for people that aren't really familiar with Tales of Vesperia, it could get pretty boring. But the fact that I am very familiar with the lore of Tales of Vesperia, it was actually a very interesting first half of the movie. A lot of questions that I didn't have were answered. Like, very tiny tidbits, like, how did Yuri know Rapide, or like, how did they meet? Like, I was curious about that, but what I got was actually a lot more satisfying. Even, like, tiny things are answered later on, like, where did Rapide's pipe come from, or where did Yuri get his Blastia? Yeah, little things like that are answered. And you even get cameos from characters from the game as well, like Estelle, Rita, Raven, and of course Yuri and Flynn. I watched the dubbed version of this movie. There's also a sub version, but I watched the dub because I wanted to hear the voices and see if any of them returned. And I'm happy to say that Yuri and Flynn are voiced by the same people, and Estelle too. And they sound great. Yeah, I love Yuri's voice. I thought like Troy Baker was a good idea from Yuri for the start. Like, he just nails it. I can't hear any other voice for Yuri. That's why I watched the dub version. But there are other voices for other familiar characters, like Commandant Alexei, Raven, Rita, and I think that's about it. Yeah, those voice actors and actress are different. Commandant Alexei's was the only one that really bugged me a lot because he sounded way different from his original voice. And I tried imagining his original voice saying some of the lines he was saying. I was like, it's like a totally different character. I understand this was years ago, but most of the characters look the same. I mean, it was years ago. The only one that looks drastically different is Rapide, who's actually a little puppy. He's adorable. And Rita's voice is different. I thought it fit her very well. Like, I like her original voice better, of course, but I think this one, if they could have chose any voice, I'm glad it was this one, because they still captured the essence of Rita and like what made her character. She's only in a little bit of the movie, but when she's in there, it had me laughing. Like, Rita's a good character. She's like one of my favorites. And then Raven appears. He's still under the command of Don Whitehorse. He's in Altosk and all that, and he's with the guild, and he has these missions. He doesn't have that many lines, but it's noticeably different for his voice. But you can imagine his real voice doing those lines, and the writing was on spot. And speaking of the writing and animation, it was all like affiliated with people who were associated with the games or game Tales of Vesperia. The director of this movie, which is also his directorial debut, was the one who directed the animated cutscenes of the game Tales of Vesperia. So the movie looks exactly like those animated cutscenes, and it's very, very good looking. Like, I gotta give props to this animation. Like, I loved the cutscenes in Vesperia, but now it's been extended to 1 hour and 50 minutes, and that's awesome. I loved it. It was very cool. And it was also like helped with Bandai Namco. They also worked on this movie as well, and they really captured the feel that the game brought to it. Like, everything in the world looks like it did in the game, and that's pretty freaking cool. And the action, like, there may not be that much action, but when it's there, it's animated beautifully. Because with the animated cutscenes of Vesperia, it was hardly during action. Like, the cutscenes would end and you would do the battle yourself. But now we get to see fights happening in fully fledged animation, and it's badass. Like, Yuri and all the other characters fight so fluently. Like, you don't see moves like that in Vesperia because it's like it's like just a plated RPG where you only have a strict set of movesets. But when it's fully animated and very cinematic, it just looks so great. And fans of the series will like what they did for the credits. I thought it was a nice touch. It had me smiling. I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's something that fans of the game will really appreciate at the end of this. And you're just like, oh, that's perfect. That's the best way to end this, possibly. But like I said in the beginning, this is meant for Tales of Vesperia fans. If you want extended lore of the universe, then this is a good place to go, because this was the only Tales of movie that has been made up to this point. I think it's because Tales of Vesperia was very liked among fans. It was a very popular one. And the fact that we got extended lore and a lot of answered questions, like, what was Yuri like in the Knights? Why did he not like it so much? And you get to find out a lot about Yuri's character as well. Like, why he views people the way he does in Tales of Vesperia, and why he's so intent on being alone. He goes through a lot in this movie. Like, the tale of him and Rapide is pretty heartbreaking. And it's a very well done movie. But if you are not a fan of Tales of Vesperia, or have never heard of it, I recommend playing the games first, and then watching Tales of Vesperia: The First Strike. If you're not interested in playing any video games, then check out The First Strike. And then maybe after watching it, you're curious to see where it goes, because the ending leaves a lot to be desired. But if you've already played the games, then you know what's going to happen. Alright, well, that's my review of Tales of Vesperia: The First Strike. I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty cool, but it's recommended for people who are aware of the lore. So, I hope you had a good time on Ride Time. I will see you all next time.